Welcome back to the OB broadcast episode. It would make so much more sense if I just sort of looked up what number it was before I started. I'm pretty sure it's I want to say 10. It's a Monday and it's late. I didn't put one out last week, which sucks. Was really hoping I could maintain doing one a week, and I just didn't get a chance to do one over the past week. Sort of felt a bit like garbage the past week, through reasons of nothing really serious, and didn't get a chance. I don't know, I'm still not able to record one of these with people in the house and like people in the room next to me. I don't know what it is. I've explained it ad nauseum at this point, I'm sure, but just knowing other people are in the house, just listening, it's really hard. It's like it's the strangest sort of stage fright. Because I've actually been on stage before, like in high school, performing and doing acting stuff. So it's definitely not traditional stage fright, but it's some level of stage fright that I don't understand. I know I mentioned that there would be an interview on the podcast last week or this week. Unfortunately, the interview I had lined up, we could not make schedules meet at the point that we had arranged. So it was meant to be last Friday, or even maybe the Friday before that, and just a scheduling error. It sort of meant that we couldn't record it when I planned to. But we have rescheduled it for this Thursday morning, Wednesday night for him, because time zones. So good. I am still excited to put that up. A little unfortunate I didn't get it out sooner, because I was sort of hoping that would take the place of another podcast, so it was sort of like a fallback if I didn't get time to record one. But yeah, I'll definitely have that up, all things considered, as soon as possible. Other updates, I know I've been meant to be reading a book a week or every 2 weeks. I'm in the middle of Fyodor Dostoevsky's Notes from the Underground, and I have not finished it. I have started it. I'm about, I want to say 20% in, which is not much considering the audiobook's only like 5 hours, so it's not much. But I feel like I've jumped into this too hard, right? I've chosen specifically short audiobooks that I can knock out a large number of them, for reasons unbeknownst to me. But just the level, like this is, from what I understand, sort of like highbrow literature, and it's not something where I can sort of be half paying attention, because if I'm sitting eating dinner, right, and I'm listening to an audiobook, and I'm eating, and say I'm having a burger, right, and in my head, if I'm not like saying each word in my head as it's being read out, and I think, oh man, I need to go get a napkin. Oh wait, do we have any napkins? Oh, I might have to put that on the shopping list. If I think even that, then that's like 45 seconds of dialogue that I've missed, and then nothing makes sense after that. Because, like I said, it's like I'm not the smartest person. I don't follow that much literature. I'm really only starting to get back into books. So this is just, the phrase like running before you can walk. This is sort of like, it's like doing the hurdles blindfolded, is essentially what I'm trying to say. It's a real step in a direction I'm not sure is the most prudent, but we'll get through it, and then maybe I'll try and find an audiobook that's slightly easier to process, because, I feel like I'm using way too much brain power trying to process what he's actually saying, and not enjoying it as much as you should with a book. Because really, isn't that what it's about? You're enjoying reading. It's not a mental chore. It's something that you do out of recreation. Just because I wasn't reading or listening to my audiobook does not mean I wasn't engaging in any media, as I very loudly put down my headphones. I watched Punisher Season 2 on Netflix over the course of like 2 days, or the most recent 2 days. If you're not aware, Netflix licensed, or I guess Marvel licensed a bunch of Marvel characters to Netflix to create like these sort of like the Avenger type movies, except instead of movies, they're TV shows, which I think, generally speaking, are better than the movies, because I don't like the movies. Oh god, we're doing this again. Anyway, Punisher came out, and at this point, the license haven't been renewed, so those shows are sort of in limbo. Whether or not they'll continue on the Disney streaming service is still unbeknownst. But I watched Punisher, and it's still the whole. I think it's Venom. Basically, is what I'm saying. Right, I was watching through, and there's just like heaps of violence, and there's heaps of like gunfighting, and the story's like, it's just whatever. And I don't think it's highbrow art, right? Like it's not the best written TV show in the world. It's not Avatar: The Last Airbender, but it's still enjoyable. But I think it's probably one of the first times I've been sitting watching something on Netflix specifically, apart from Heroes, that I've just sort of gone, this is sort of average. Like it's enjoyable, right? But it's sort of just average. Like the characters are really cool. They all interact and interface with each other interestingly. It's one of those shows where sort of everyone knows everyone, and eventually everyone gets together and they all interact. And the thing that I liked about season 2 is that, the main character knows a bunch of different characters, but all of those characters don't necessarily know each other. And season 2, they remedy that. And I say remedy as if it's a problem, which I think it is. I think it's nice when basically everybody that the main character knows gets to meet each other. And the Netflix shows are pretty good about, rounding out secondary characters, so they're not just sort of there as support. They're almost, I guess they're their own character. So it was cool. The ending I was happy with. They took it in a direction that I want to say it's sort of cathartic. Like it's the sort of ending that I like, and I don't see basically ever. So I will say that I was happy with the ending. It's just super. It's a super rare thing. I don't know. Like I say, cathartic. Basically, how many times have you been watching a TV show, and have you thought to yourself, if they just sat down and talked for like 2 minutes, so many of the problems would disappear, right? And I sort of like that. Anyway, so Punisher. I haven't got like dot points for it because I wasn't really planning on talking about it. But yeah, that's what I've been watching. It's just fun. I think Venom's a more fun movie than this is a TV show, and maybe because it was a 13 episode and all episodes are about an hour ish, some shorter, long. It was just fun. Maybe they signed on for too many episodes, because definitely points where I just sort of felt like. Here's the thing: I don't ever really pull out my phone when I'm watching a TV show or a movie if it's engaging enough. But so I watched Venom twice and I didn't take out my phone at all. But this one, there's a couple points in there where I just sort of was, on my phone looking at stuff, and I was sort of half listening, half not. And I guess that they get to that point around 2/3 in where it sorts to stagnate just before all the final climactic action happens. I do think it's enjoyable, and if you like all the Marvel stuff and all, basically if you like Marvel or you like any of those shows like Shooter or Ozark, I've not watched them, but I imagine they're pretty much in the same vein where it's just a bunch of shooting and then some story thrown in there. The other thing I've been watching recently, and it's sort of a weird one. I've been watching a bit of Gordon Ramsay recently, and the Gordon Ramsay channels on YouTube are just the weirdest thing ever. Right, because they really feel like they are run by him, or like a massive fan of him, because they are really well run relative to I guess the only thing I can compare it to is like the UK. I think Channel 4 is the name, the one that has like sort of compilations of 8 out of 10 Cats, and 8 out of 10 Cats does Countdown and all those sorts of shows. And do they do Would I Lie to You, or am I thinking of something else? No, they do The Last Leg. That's the other one I do. But yeah, they do all sorts of compilations. The only difference is the Channel 4 one, they seem to reuse a lot of content. Maybe that's just because there's not a lot of episodes that they have to go off of. And also because it's comedy, so they're trying to highlight the best bits, and there's only so many best bits per episode per season. But the Gordon Ramsay one, it's brilliant. And I'm not like the hugest Gordon Ramsay fan, right? So when I was about maybe 15, 16, one of the guys I went to high school with we were just talking about like what we'd been watching, and he said, yeah, we've just been like binge watching Gordon Ramsay. I can't remember if he specified what specifically, because he's only got like 1,000,001 shows. And that was sort of the first time the concept of like watching that sort of show on your own time, not just like, as you're eating dinner or as you're like sitting on the couch watching TV. This is, 10 years ago when you would actually watch TV as opposed to stream something. But then I didn't really take anything from it. I think we're at Levers, which is sort of like graduation or like the sort of after party afterwards. And I think that was a time when he mentioned it because he said, yeah, I've got a bunch on my hard drive. Do you guys want to watch that? And I think we ended up watching like 2 episodes of Skins. That another show I didn't actually commit to watching until sometime afterwards. But that was sort of the first recollection I have of someone mentioning it. Anyway, it would have been about 7 months ago. I actually watched my first Gordon Ramsay actual production, and it was season, I want to say, either 13 or 16 of the Hell's Kitchen program. And it's really interesting because my mum, I think she hates Gordon Ramsay, and I think I understand why. Because every time you see him, he's just like this swearing, just, jerk, right? And I think sort of that's the idea that people that have never watched the show have. Because I would have had that mentality before watching the show. He just, oh yeah, no, I've seen clips of him. He just swears and says everything's raw, right? And he's just like, a real mean dude, and these people are just trying to cook. And I actually think, and I'll explicitly say what I've watched and how I've come to this conclusion, but I actually think Gordon Ramsay is just a really nice person, or he's just a normal person, but he surrounds himself in these shows with people that are just like so much worse. So I watched either season 13 or 16 of Hell's Kitchen, and in the first like 10 minutes, you're meeting all these contestants. And this is Hell's Kitchen, the one where they like they're actual chefs. Well, they think they're actual chefs competing to, earn a spot at one of his restaurants. And in the first 10 minutes, they're like all so arrogant, and they all reckon they're the best ever. And like maybe there's, maybe it's being put on for the TV. I wouldn't be surprised, but it's so funny to see how quickly it just becomes apparent that they're bad cooks. I think I might have got lucky with the season I watched, because the person that ended up winning was consistently a good cook throughout the whole show, and was not one of the people that's like, talking and complaining about other people. They sort of just, I'm here, I'm doing my cooking, and just going to do the best cooking I can, and hopefully I win. I know she did win because she was the best out of that lot. I have no idea where she is now. It would be interesting to find that out. But yeah, some of these people are just so loud and aggressive and bad, and then they're actually cooking food that people are paying for and eating, or at least eating. I don't know how much paying for actually goes on. And he's like yelling at them, and you go, oh well, it's not that big of a deal. But then you see what these people are doing, and you go, I'm not a chef. I can cook maybe 5 dishes, but that's really bad. Like even I, when I'm cooking like hamburgers, for example, even I will know to check the inside to make sure it's not cold, or make sure it's not raw, or make sure it's not overcooked. So that's one of the publications of his that I've watched, and it was a good watch because, and this is the bit that you don't see if you're just watching the highlights, but 50% of the time he's like he's a nice person trying to give advice. And I think if you were to meet him in real life, either in the context of saying, hey, I'm a chef, or I like to cook, what could you come over and give me just some tips, right? I think in that situation, or maybe say you're at a bar and he's at a bar for whatever reason, and you go and sit down next to him and you say something like, oh hey, I'm a big fan, do you mind if I buy you a beer and just sit and have a chat? I think in that context, as infrequent as they may be, he would be a really nice guy, like super amicable, really nice. He'd probably pay for your beer if you offered to buy his. But I just think in the context of these shows where you're creating food that is, can potentially be hazardous to people's health, and you're putting it out, and then in the case of Kitchen Nightmares, trying to sell it, it's pretty abysmal, right? And so that is the other one. I've been watching a few episodes here and there of God, what's it called? It's like Hell's Kitchen Nightmare or Kitchen Nightmares. Basically, he goes to restaurants that mail to him and say, hey, we need help. And then he goes and then helps them. And then they say, oh, we don't want your help. Go away. and then he yells at them. It's kind of funny. I've probably watched about 4 or 5 episodes, and this is, I know, instead of reading my book. I know I said I was supposed to be reading this book, but sometimes you just want to watch some Hell's Kitchen, some Kitchen Nightmares, because it's enjoyable. And I think it's enjoyable because there's like a lot of reality TV, and you have to make the distinction, because I think this show is more real than other reality TV shows. But I think with this, you actually enjoy watching it more because these people are kind of dodgy, right? They're either trying to make a lot of money selling really bad stuff, or maybe they're just trying to, I don't know, they say things are fresh and it's all frozen. But yeah, he'll go into these places, and I think the premise, I think he genuinely does want to help. Like, TV show aside, I think he actually wants to help. And it's insane, the amount of people that say, Chef Ramsey, come and help me with my restaurant. And then he goes to help them with their restaurant. And then they just yell at him and cuss him out. It just makes no sense to me. And I'm not gonna say it's because they're all Americans, because that's just a very rude, incorrect generalization. However, in saying that, it is filmed entirely in America, and I feel like the episodes or the restaurants where it's not as like loud and argumentative, I feel like those episodes probably just get cut. So, maybe it's reality TV just portraying the worst in people. But it's not something I watch all the time. Like, I binge watched that one season of Hell's Kitchen because I think it's only like 13 episodes, roughly the same as Punisher. So I binge watched that, 7-8 months ago, however long ago this was. And in the past, 3 or 4 days, I've watched maybe 4 or 5 episodes of Hell's Kitchen. So it's very mellow stuff. But the reason the channel is weird to me is I feel like it's PewDiePie. Like, I feel like it's the most subscribed to channel on YouTube. And maybe this is just me, right? But when I'm looking through comments on YouTube, because normally as I'm watching something, if there's like a lull in what's happening, I'll just like read what other people are saying. Or sometimes something will happen, I'll be curious about what other people say. And more often than not, with like the top comments, I always like click on their profile and have a look at them. So, if someone says something really mean or something really nice or something really funny, you sort of just look at them and, just see who they're subscribed to. Because it's always interesting to see someone like make a really, really funny comment, and then you click on their subscriptions and you notice that like 50% of your subscriptions are also theirs. Inversely, when you see someone say something horrible and racist, you look at their subscription and you notice that you've got none in common, which is also always nice. But the thing that's weird is that I feel like every single person on YouTube is subscribed to one of the Gordon Ramsay channels. Now, of course, I know that's not true because the numbers don't back it up. However, I feel like every time I click on someone's profile, and this is not just on Gordon Ramsay type videos, obviously, like with any video, music video, content creator, anything, I feel like when you go to their subscriptions, Gordon Ramsay, Hell's Kitchen, something or other is always there. Right? It doesn't matter if, you're on you're on a vegetarian video, right? And you're like scrolling through and someone leaves a really good vegetarian recipe. Not that I'm vegetarian, but you click on their profile and it's like a whole bunch of like vegan and vegetarian and health food. And at the bottom, it's just like Gordon Ramsay. And then you go to like an alt-right, political channel, and then you scroll through all of their subscriptions, and at the bottom, it's Gordon Ramsay. I don't know what it is, but I feel like every time I click on someone's profile, they're subscribed to that channel. And I know there's a good, I think it's like a couple of mil that channel has accumulated in subscribers. So it's not like small, but it's definitely not 70 million. However, I feel like it's basically everyone, isn't it? I cannot remember the last time I clicked on someone's profile and I didn't see that they were subscribed to Gordon Ramsay in some capacity. And that's not even including like the random channels that are like, oh, Timo H, and he's uploaded like all of season 16 of Kitchen Nightmares. But yeah, that's my mum hates Gordon Ramsay, and I think I understand why. I think it's just because anytime you see him, he's just like this pissed off old man who's always just yelling. It's interesting, like I bring up my mum. She does this really interesting thing on Facebook that I'm so happy about. So I check her messages from time to time just because she gets, she's a podiatrist, so she has a lot of patients that are older, right? And some of the back and forth, like, organizing, what are they called? Checkups, meetings, appointments. Sometimes they're done through Facebook, right? And so she'll have like elderly people's Facebook, just like messaging, hey, is this date open? That's not why I check. Because a lot of her clientele is older, they are the sort of people, generally speaking, to get done by, phishing scams, farming scams, people hacking into accounts because their security is terrible. And on multiple occasions, so this isn't just like me being overly paranoid, multiple occasions, mum's come to me and said, hey, I got this message from my elderly patient and it just looks really sus. Can you just have a look and tell me if this is like a scam or... And multiple times, like, yes. The answer is yes. Someone's either gotten onto their account or, made an identical one because their privacy settings are garbage and, I don't even know what they're trying to do sometimes, right? Like, sometimes it's very easy. It's very obvious they're trying to get money. But some of the scammed and hacked Facebook things that I've seen, they just don't make sense to me. But anyway, the point is I sometimes go through just to make sure that, she hasn't, like, she's smart. She's very good at, like, picking up on these. But I always just go through and double check because sometimes they'll get you, right? Like, I've been got, not very often, but one time I got with a Netflix account. I don't know, actually, I don't understand how it happened. I really don't, because I didn't reply to any, like, the Netflix goes to my email and, like, I didn't click on any, suspicious emails, but I don't know how it happened. But the point is, we had a family in Mexico that was somehow got onto our Netflix account and was watching from there, which would have been fine. I would have been happy to share, but they changed all the language to Mexican, or Spanish, and I couldn't read what was going on. But yeah, so I've been got. I think most people have been got, in one way or another. I was just thankful it wasn't a very serious getting got. But I always check because, sometimes they're hard to see. And she's really good. She's never ever responded to anything that was suspicious. Well, apart from one, but I think that was because she saw it and knew it was suspicious and she sort of was just trying to play it out and see what was happening. I told her not to do that just to be safe, and she didn't. But she's very, very smart at not getting done by these. And the act of me going through, some of her messages, nothing private, but like going through some of them, just checking to make sure everything is all, on the up and up. I noticed that a lot of the messages she's sent from like family and friends, she just ignores. And look, she's a busy person. She works all the time. She works from home. She works heaps. And when she's not working, she's like, doing family stuff, right? So I totally understand that she, doesn't have time to reply to everyone. But this is the bit that makes me know that I'm not adopted and that we are, in fact, blood family. Because she's, because all of her family and friends are older, right? So like, 30, 40, 50-ish. They are prone to they're prone to the things that most people that age are, where you sort of, let's see if we can get this going. Like, chainmail? I know some people might be too young for chainmail, where it would be like, oh, if you've started reading this, you can't stop till the end. And if you don't send this to 15 people, little Kathy's going to kill you in your sleep, or you're going to have 15 years bad luck with relationships, which, coming to think about that last one, maybe that one was real. But anyway. No, so like chainmail used to be like really dark and sinister. But now you sort of see it in like Facebook messages where it's like, oh, let's see if we can get this going, resend this to 15 people to show that you love them and will support them through anything. And the thing is, my mum does love these people, right? And she will support them through anything. But for whatever reason, I have to ask her, she just doesn't even entertain it. Like, just doesn't even remotely. You know what? I'm actually going to go and get her because I think it's just too funny. All right, so I went and got my mum because you're on the podcast right now. Yeah.
Hi, Brandon. Thanks. I wasn't ready for this, but anyway.
No, I know. I sort of threw you into it.
You did.
I want you to know
yes.
that I've been talking about you.
Oh, okay. All good, I hope.
Absolutely. I've represented you fairly and honestly, and I think maybe overly fair and honestly. But the point is,
I was going to say something that happened this morning, but that might not be appropriate on a podcast.
probably not.
Oh, okay.
Basically, I was talking about like internet stuff. Yeah, I know you're looking around. It's a very small box and it's hot and it's awful. I'll be making a new podcast booth at some point in the future. Anyway, so I was talking about internet stuff, right? Like people online and internet safety.
Yes.
And I was saying that from time to time, you've shown me like messages from people saying that, you know, just like scam. Remember that one patient who we won't name, but
Yes.
their Facebook had been compromised.
Yes.
Yeah. So you get, well, you have an older clientele,
Yes.
and those people are prone to internet scams, right?
Yes.
You can sound like if you wouldn't mind sounding less like you're under duress, that'd be great.
Okay.
But basically, from time to time, I was saying that I've been known to just check your Facebook messages for like any of those people that you might not have caught.
Okay.
And I did say that you are very good at catching them and that
Yes.
you've never been caught out before. But, you know, because they're so prevalent that I sometimes just double check to be sure.
Yep.
And I
And
know,
did you find one that I didn't know about?
no, I found something, basically my favorite thing ever. Because a lot of your family and friends are of the older persuasion, they do the whole like chain mail. They're not scams, but it's sort of just
So you saw the one where that patient realised.
no.
Oh, okay.
This is something completely different,
Okay.
and you've got a lot of these
Okay.
where they sort of send you like a badly, made picture or like a copy and paste text where it's like, oh, let's see if we can send this to 15 people that we love to show them that we'll stand by them through anything. Just the sort of thing that someone creates and then copy and pastes and it just goes everywhere, right?
Mm-hmm, yep.
And if you go to like any, 60-year-old grandma's Facebook page, her wall is just covered in like those.
There's a lot of younger people that do that
Oh,
too, so
oh,
don't
no,
discriminate.
absolutely.
Mhm,
Lots
okay.
of basically young mums, like
Okay.
15 to 21-year-old mums I see do this a lot. But
Okay.
the point is,
You
you
don't
are...
want to scare off all your listeners because,
No, that's fine. I don't think the people listening to this are the people that are going to be posting.
Okay.
Anyway, the point
Should
is,
never assume, but anyway, go on.
anytime someone sent you a message along the lines of, oh, let's see if we can get this going, send this to 15 people that you love to show that you love them, you just you just ignore the hell out of them.
I was going to say, did you see I don't respond?
You don't.
No.
And I was saying that this is, if nothing else, proves that we are 100% related. You just don't reply to them.
No.
And I've said that you don't reply to all your messages.
And
because
it's not because I don't have 15 friends, because I have more than 15 friends. I could send it off 3 or 4 times over.
I did actually mention that.
Did you?
I said
Thank
that you're a busy person, and it's not that you don't love and support these people, because you would, but you just don't give them anything.
Nope.
Why? This is what I got you on for. I want to know why you ignore them. I mean, I know why I ignore them, because they're garbage. But why do you?
Probably just because I haven't physically got the time to sit down and send it off to that many people, and because I really probably don't think it's going to work.
It's awesome.
However, I'm pretty good because like years ago they used to say that if you broke a chain letter, that,
Yeah. Oh, we were talking about them chain mail.
Yes.
Well, I think some of those might be real because
Yes,
like
it could be real.
I've ignored ones that was like, if you don't reply 15 people, then little Kathy's going to kill you.
Yes.
But like there's also been ones where it's like, oh, if you don't reply to this within 24 hours, you're going to have 10 years bad luck with relationships. And
Yep. Well, there
maybe
you go.
that one was real.
Yeah, so maybe some of the ones that I've broken are real too. Looking and seeing what's going on around here. But anyway,
It's
but no.
abysmal. I really should at some point like Photoshop, because this is just like, it's completely audio, right?
Oh, absolutely.
But I really should at some point.
It's a makeshift booth.
Yeah. Well, I've described it ad nauseum at this point, but I really should just Photoshop in a photo of what this looks like.
Well, maybe not, because then you might not.
Well, no, it's transparency.
Okay, fair enough then.
Well, thank you for coming on.
That's no problem,
I know
mate.
you're in the middle of doing other stuff, but
Yes,
I
I
just
am.
think it's so funny
Yes.
that you just...
And you know what? I still keep getting them, so they still keep
Yeah.
trying. But But did you see the one recently from one of my patients that said that she was not, due to the fact that she kept getting hacking and her Facebook account kept getting hacked, she actually sent out a warning and said that she wasn't ignoring anyone, but if she was getting any more of these chain letters, she just wasn't going to pass them on because she's just been hacked too many times. So Sometimes, somewhere along the line, even the oldies learn.
I can't tell if it's like amazing that she's putting her foot down to these, or if it's awful that it's happened so many times.
It's awful that it's happened so many times, but it is sad because she actually does like, that's her only, you got to understand a lot of these older people now that they've got that form of communication. It's, they're thinking, oh, hey, I'm out here, I'm with technology, I'm doing these things. Who's to say that, using all the technology now with these older people, keeping their mind active, who's to say that's not going to warden off dementia or Alzheimer's? You never know.
I think that's such an incredibly cogent point that no one seems to want to make.
Absolutely.
Whenever this sort of thing comes up, people say, oh, no, oh man, I hate teaching my grandma stuff because she just doesn't learn. But the thing...
Yeah, keep that mind active, keep them going, keep them on computers of some sort of nature, yeah.
Well, not only that, but these are the people that taught you how to walk and use a spoon. So why can't you have a bit of patience with something that did not exist when they were your age?
Well, I'm thinking more, with the...
Oh, no, you're absolutely right. It's, a
It'd
great
be
point.
really interesting to see if, my generation growing up now with, having to be thrown into all this technology, it'd be interesting to see if the prevalence of dementia and Alzheimer's is as high. I mean, we'll probably die of other things, but...
Chemtrails.
Yeah, but hopefully not of that. So that way you won't have to put me in a nursing home and look after me, darling.
Wonderful. Okay, well... I actually think that's a great point. I'm so glad you brought that up.
Yes, I know, because I'm just a great person, I know.
98% of the time.
98% of the time, okay.
Okay, well, I'm going to ask you to leave because it's so incredibly hot in here.
It is. I'm taking up too much air, aren't I?
Yeah.
Okay, well, thanks, listeners, and thank you, Brendan.
Thank you. Well, thanks, Mum. That's genuinely the first time I've ever heard that theory about, technology and that sort of stuff warding off dementia, and I'm surprised I didn't think of it because it's actually... a really good point. Kind of crazy that it's never come up. Anyway, so that's why she doesn't respond to chainmail. Man, I'm so glad. I'm my dad doesn't, but that's just because he's not that sort of person. He's also not a big friend person. He's got 5, and that's enough for him. And he doesn't do any of the Facebook or doesn't even really text. So, but he's not even in the category. He obviously wouldn't, but just out of principle. But no, it's really, it's really glad to see. I'm really glad to see that. I know I mentioned at the beginning that I was having sort of a crummy week, but wow, crummy? What are you, 12? No, kind of a garbage week. But one thing happened that was really cool. So at the radio station, one of the people there, she is Japanese, right? And me being me, I don't know if you can tell, I'm a bit of a fan of Pokemon. I've not actually ranted about it as much as I would have assumed at this point. But I'm a huge Pokemon fan. And we were talking, it was probably 5 or 6 months ago, right? And I must have bought some Pokemon cards that I was really happy about. And she's on the hour or the 2 hours before my show on the radio station, right? And so she's she's there before I get there, and when I get there she's finishing up her show. And we'll talk for a bit, and her and her wife often go to and from Japan. And it must have been at one of these points we were talking about Japan, or I was, talking about how much I like Pokemon. She said, I've got a bunch of Pokemon stuff that I just can't get rid of. She was going I've tried to give it to friends and family and nephews and nieces, and none of them really want it. And I said to her, you got any Pokemon merchandise? I'll have it. If you don't want it, I'll have it. Pikachu, I don't like the Pokemon Pikachu that much. I really, really don't. But it's Pokemon stuff. And right now, not in my possession, but within reaching vicinity, I've got Pokemon Pikachu slippers. I've got a Pikachu onesie and hoodie, beanie, all within touching distance. And I don't even like Pikachu. So I'm like a Pokemon hoarder. I'll have anything. Anyway, she goes, yeah, I'll be sure to get it to you. Anyway, nothing ever happened. I didn't assume that she lied about it. It's just, I guess she must have forgotten, and I didn't bring it up because I didn't want to seem petulant. But the other day would have been about Thursday. Mum comes into my room, and my sister and I were just playing Smash Bros. And my mum's has this plastic wrap full of books and stuff. And she goes to my sister, was one of your aunties dropping off books for you? And me just being a a nuisance, I like jokingly said, "Oh, ha, they're mine," because they sort of looked like kids' books. And she goes, "Oh, okay." And then she brought them a little closer, and I saw that one of them was a Pikachu on the front. And I had a look, and I opened it up, and I started pulling everything out. And I had no idea where they were coming from, because this had been like 5 or 6, 7, 8 months since the conversation, right? And I was a little concerned because, like, I mean, I'm sure there's some people out there that don't like me. So I wasn't given any warning. So I was saying, should I wear gloves in case it's covered in like anthrax? Is this like a trap? It's like you put, rat sack in peanut butter to try and get mice. I thought it might have been a similar situation because I opened it up and there's sort of like these, they're like books, right? And they've got their own sleeves, but they're from like 20 years ago. I forget, it's like called the something collection. It's not the Pop series because that's cards, but they're sort of like these books, and they've got like a slot for each of the 150. I don't think I had Mew, so 150 original Pokemon, and you collected different stickers of different rarities, and you would put them in, and just in incredible condition with a whole bunch of like spares at the back. One of them was like a Pikachu one was a Mewtwo, and it was like so cool. And then I looked a bit further, and there was this weird like primary school grammar thing that I couldn't quite understand. And at the back, it had a whole bunch of comic books, like original comic books, like older than me comic books. So there was a bunch of DC ones, there was a bunch of Marvel ones. One of them was a Thor, one of them was a Spider-Man. I was excited to see that. And then there was a couple called, I think Valiant, which, unless I'm wrong, I guess it's just a comic book company that sort of went under and didn't get the notoriety that Marvel did. So I'm looking through this, and I'm just trying to figure out where it came from. And then eventually I looked on the back of them, and they had like a little sticker that said, 300 yen or whatever the price was. And so it sort of clicked that she'd obviously picked them up in Japan, and she'd left them for me. And it was just the coolest thing. It was like this little nerdy care package. And I'll be honest, you might be thinking that the coolest part would be reading the comic books or looking at the Pokemon stuff. But in all honesty, sorry, I should clarify what the reading thing was. Basically, she said, I don't know if you'd find this interesting. Spoilers, I did. But they were sort of like, it's like a really complex sequence of flashcards and keys and legends that they basically use to teach English in Japan. I don't know if it was a government-funded thing or if it was just like a program. But no, it was really cool. She said, if you can figure out how it works, it might be interesting to you. And I said, yeah, I love this sort of stuff. I was telling the truth, by the way. It's really cool. But the thing that I found the most interesting out of all of it, I'd never seen these Pokemon stickers and books before, so they were cool. And this just goes to show what I value. But flicking through these comic books, seeing the ads was the coolest thing. Just the way they used to advertise stuff, just the way that it was the things where you can cut them out and you tick or you write down what number of item that you want, and then you put your name and address, and then you put it in an envelope along with the money, and then you would send it away. And then it was always this fun game of, whether or not you're actually going to receive the stuff because there was no tracking numbers or anything back then. It was so cool to see, Spider-Man advertised popcorn and, Green Goblin branded ham and all this weird stuff. It was really cool. Obviously, the paper itself was this sort of like off yellow coloured, really thick, almost card, not quite paper. It's the same sort of stuff. Like my dad's got some old Peanuts, like Charlie Brown comic books. Not comic books, they're like book books full of comic strips. But yeah, so it's the same sort of paper, but it's really interesting to see something so far from your own lifetime. Like the closest to that personally I've ever experienced is K-Zones and D-Mags when I was a kid. And they were basically just like, these really glossy, they were sort of like, how do you describe them? I guess it was like a magazine for kids, sort of like a Woman's Weekly or TMZ, that type of thing, but for kids stuff. So like, comics and TV shows and cartoons and prices and stuff. So between that and so that's pretty much the closest I've experienced, like old-fashioned comic books. The other thing is I recently bought some graphic novels the Avatar: The Last Airbender ones, just because they had continuation stories from the main show that I wanted to, be in the loop for. And I got about 7 of them, and man, they're expensive, like $25 each, which is like, I don't know, maybe 17 USD roughly. And there's like 3 because they're like trilogies. So it's costly, man. I spent like $150, and I only got like 7 or 8, so they're pricey. But between that and the K-Zones, that's really the extent of the comic book knowledge and experience that I have. So it was really, really cool to see, some old-fashioned, like retro, real, authentic comics. One of them was still in its like, how they, I guess they come in like little sleeves, because I can't imagine that, she put it there on just one to protect it. I guess they came in their individual sleeves, and you could, they were bought like that for protection purposes. It was really cool to flick through. There was like a little page on the back where they had all the different volumes, and you could tick which ones you wanted to order if you only recently got into Iron Man or whatever, and you wanted to get all the old ones. It was also really cool where they had like on the back page they had the address for like different stores and like what prices they would be having for on what dates for which comics. It was crazy. Like you would have to, like that was advertising in advance. Like you would have a sale, but it wouldn't go on sale until those issues came out. So I don't know how, like what, a couple of weeks? Because how long does it take to get something printed and circulated? You might have to, say, oh yeah, all these issues, they're going on sale, but in a month when the advertising goes out for it. Kind of crazy how much times have changed. I'm pretty much going to wrap it up here after this one last thing that I want to talk about. I do have some others, but I guess I'll just save them for the next podcast, because it's always good to have stuff to talk about. But just because I've been talking about older things, like those Gordon Ramsay shows, they're from like, 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 years ago. And all these comic books are obviously retro stuff. So I did want to talk about one other thing. And I don't even know why I wrote it down in my... I basically just got written old forums, maximum rider wings, right? And that's basically all I've got to go off. And I vaguely remember the thread point. But do you guys like remember old forums? When I say old, I mean like... not like 2012, but like 2002. Like super old forums and board posts and, Zats and all that sort of stuff. It's kind of crazy. Because I used to, when I was a, like teenager, like preteen even, I read this book series called Maximum Ride. And it's by James Patterson. It's this great science fiction novel series about these children that are taken in their infancy and even pre-infancy, like still, embryos, still in that state, and they're spliced with 2% bird DNA, and they have wings, right? I don't know the significance of that, but basically when they're all sort of like ages between 7 and 14 or 16, the 6 kids decide to escape, and then they're hunted mercilessly by the scientific, not community, but like faction that created them. And then they have these things called erasers, which are basically just like werewolves, right? People that I can't remember if they morph into like bipedal wolf creatures, or maybe they just are them like constantly in that state and they can't shift between the two. But anyway, so it's a really enjoyable book. I read about 5 or 6 of them, and I think maybe now there's like close to 9, so I'm a bit behind. I really would like to catch up on them, but it's just, incredible book series, because not only, well, firstly, it had like a really strong female lead, which was rare for the, early 2000s, which was cool. They were all young, and as a young person, it was obviously it was for younger people, but it was nice to resonate with someone my own age. It's funny because like back then I was super into acting, and I really thought like I could play one of the characters when the movie came out, because there was all these rumors about a movie coming out for it, and I don't even know how I found them, because the internet wasn't like the most prevalent thing back then. Funnily enough, they did actually make a movie about it. My brother saw it, and apparently it's just actual garbage, like M. Night Shyamalan Last Airbender type garbage. But yeah, so this was like a book series that I read when I was like 12, 13, I want to say, and I loved it. It was strong, young characters that were like, and they would fight with like punch and kick these big werewolf type things. For whatever reason, I guess they were just stronger than the average kid, because because science. And they had these like big wingspans, like, 3, 4, 5 meters. And they would, and this was probably the coolest bit, because they would retract, like the wings would retract right up onto their spine, and they could put on a jumper and you couldn't even notice. And what they would do is they would cut big holes in whatever jackets and shirts they were wearing, so that if they needed to quickly, jet out and fly off, they could. It was so cool because, I mean, when you say it out loud, it sounds horrible. This next bit, but as a kid, I thought it'd be so cool because they never really lived anywhere. They sort of, flew all across. I think it was set in the United States. They would fly across, the different states, and they would sleep wherever, and they would just keep traveling and flying. They didn't have to worry about like, school or roads or cars or laws, anything. They sort of were just surviving. Now, saying it out loud sounds horrible, but and not that I like had a particularly rough school life. I really enjoyed school, but it just sounded awesome at the time. Anyway, I was so invested in this. I remember at one point just looking up, trying to find the logistics of it, like how real it was. And again, let me preface by saying I was like maybe 13 at the absolute oldest. But I remember reading it and thinking, I wonder if you actually can get wings, like they do in the book. And I came across this forum, and I don't know why I remember this so vividly. But the consensus of the forum was that if you get, 2 wings from like the same bird or whatever, and you tape, like gaffer tape, like duct tape, like sticky tape, one on each of your shoulder blades, you could grow wings, and you had to leave them there for a year. So if you went swimming, you had to keep them on, or maybe the caveat that was you were allowed to take them off if you went swimming, and you would keep them taped to your back, and eventually they would, I guess the ends would go in, and you would start to sprout wings eventually over time. And it was the stupidest thing. I can't remember. It would be great to see if I could actually find it. I'll probably end up doing that after the podcast, but I can't remember if it was, after a year you got little tiny ones that eventually grew, or after a year they sort of just like come in full. But it was just the stupidest thing. And I want to be 100% honest and clear. I never ever tried it, ever. And that was mostly due to the fact that I was an avid swimmer back then. So it would have been a little difficult to work it into like the, 3 or 4 or 5 hours a week swimming I was doing. But I think the biggest reason I didn't do it is because, and this is the sad bit, because I was so young. The biggest reason I didn't do it was not because it's obviously fake. The biggest reason I didn't do it is because a year, that's so long. I don't think I can commit to a year. It was ridiculous. I mean, I'm glad I didn't do it. I mean, it would have made for a great anecdote now, but the sad thing is the amount of people I imagine actually did it and tried it, and I cannot even assume or even try and formulate the people that were actually doing this, right? Because there were obviously people on this forum talking, like it wasn't just me reading a conversation between one person and themselves. So it would be so interesting to know the amount of people that actually did it and the amount of people that were just there like as a joke. And maybe this was like really cool marketing done by James Patterson, because from memory, it's one of those series, sort of like Archer. Like in Archer, you got Dr. Krieger that has like he's in the show, but he's also online. Like you can find his own like websites and stuff where not the actor or like the voice actor or the writers, but Dr. Krieger, and I'm saying that with like, inverted quotations or quotation marks with my fingers that you can't see. But no, he would be posting stuff online that like the viewers would find, and there's like these really cool scavenger hunts that Dr. Krieger organizes. And from memory, I think Maximum Ride was similar. Like they had their own blogs that were consistent with what was in the books, and it was if the characters were actually keeping up with their blogs. So it was really cool. So maybe these forums were like, run by the same marketing team. I don't know. It's always interesting to like look, and this is the, I guess, since this is the end of the podcast, this is the takeaway message. What you should do, find something that you resonated with as a child and just look back at it now. Because now looking back at it, I can go, that's just like, funny and cringy, but the the marketing, if it is part of the marketing, was pretty cool. I don't know, maybe I'll instead of reading this audiobook that I said I was going to, maybe I'll just watch the Maximum Ride movie and I'll come back with how phenomenally terrible I can only imagine it is. Anyway, thank you for listening to the podcast. Next week, hopefully, I will have the interview up, and then the week after, I will be talking about the book that I finished. Because, look, if I haven't finished it by the next podcast, something's gone terribly wrong. Anyway, like I said, thank you for listening. Don't text and drive, and I'll be back next time.